Hey everybody, it's Peter and I'm here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports, where we are going to talk about an in-depth review of the Kawasaki Ninja ZX-6R, also known as the Ninja 636. This thing is the stuff that dreams are made of, and I know because as a little kid, I dreamed about owning this bike. So in this review, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over some of the things that make this bike amazing, but we're also gonna be real about it. We're gonna talk about why it may not be right for you. This is not a bike I recommend for beginners, and I know that there'll be people filling the comments telling me, well, I had a bike like that when I was a beginner and I'm fine. And that's great. It's still not a bike I would recommend to beginners. We'll talk about why, what makes it really great, what makes it kind of a compromise bike, because there are some things that you can't do as well on this bike. So for someone like me, I grew up dreaming of a bike like this, and I will probably never own one. That doesn't mean I haven't ridden one. That doesn't mean I wouldn't maybe like to own one. And we'll talk about some of the options in the lineup. And it kind of gives us some hint about these ZX-4R and ZX-4RR, which are similar to this, but sort of downsized engine, and also a bike that really intrigues me. So let's get going with this review. And like I said, we're gonna try to cover the cool stuff and be real about it, and hopefully you guys can respect that. If you want to know more about this bike, at this point, we are at Canada's largest volume Kawasaki dealer. This is the only one that we have in stock. So I don't know if we can order more, what the story is with that, but right now, this is sort of a one of one. I will come back to your comments and questions with future videos to answer more and more of what I can, but if this one sells, I can't promise how soon I'll do that. So make sure if you have questions, things you want to know about it, let me know in the comments and hit subscribe, because I'll do my best to come back to it as often as we can. So let's get going with the review. So I'm going to start with something that may seem basic to you who are really big fans of this bike, but we still have people that come in and see this as a 636cc motorcycle and compare it to the Ninja 650, which has more displacement, and they just sort of wonder what the difference is. Well, the reality is this is a race bike for the street. Everything about this is designed to be a race bike. The riding position, which we're going to show you in a second, all of the components. And the bigger difference is, although this is 636cc, it is a 4-cylinder motorcycle, where the Ninja 650 is a 2-cylinder motorcycle. This has significantly more power. It is faster revving, it is higher revving, it is a completely different animal. But if you like the styling of this and you want something that's a little bit more comfortable, a little bit easier on your insurance dollars, and easier to ride overall, the Ninja 650 is there for exactly that reason. That's a bike that I've recommended to all kinds of people. This is the pinnacle of what can be done. And if you've ever driven a very, very, very high performance car, like the top of the line Porsches or an exotic car, or, you know, I drove a 700 horsepower Corvette, you find that there's a line where some of these cars kind of become less drivable every day, even though what makes them great for the track makes them great for the track. So we're going to talk about some of those features in here, but the first thing I'm going to do is going to sit across it, because as I sit across it, you're going to see that this is a different riding position and it may or may not be right for you. So when you approach this bike from the back, it's got a nice small tail section, big wide tire, but you really notice kind of the width of the tank, and that's something you don't really see from the side, but you do see from the back, and that's again because it's covering those 4 cylinders that are inline 4 here. So as I jump across here, I'm about 6 feet tall. I think I have a 32 or so inch inseam. I'm going to put the kickstand up for now. This is my most upright seating position that I can find. I'm against the tank, and you can see it is way leaned over. Now, the benefit of this is you can tuck back on the seat, and I can't do it without driving, but you can really tuck in right against this, the tank here. And the tank actually dips away, so the curvature of your helmet can actually tuck into that area there. You've got the windscreen here. That's all about aerodynamics. Now, what you're gonna find in everyday driving with a seating position like this is that obviously there's a lot of weight on your hands and it's a lot of pressure. So again, as an everyday driver, there are compromises here. But as a race bike, again, the ability to have your hands in tight, kind of angled back a little bit more than they would be on, you know, other road or more road-focused bikes, allows you to tuck in for both aerodynamics and for control. Where it gets difficult is slow speed maneuvers. And one of the reasons I don't recommend this bike for beginners is not necessarily due to its power, which of course is something to be aware of, but if you're a relatively new rider, slow speed maneuvers, these handlebars don't turn that sharp, and it's a different feeling leaning over the handlebars like this in order to do those slow speed maneuvers. So it's something to consider aside from all of the, you know, power that's available here. You may have driven a powerful bike, but driving a powerful bike like this in this position can be hard. So again, the other reason I don't recommend it as a beginner bike is because it is focused. It is harder to do a variety of riding than you would like. The other thing you're gonna notice is your legs are tucked up nice and high. Now for me, I don't find this bend in my leg to be at all uncomfortable. I'm quite comfortable like that, but some people are gonna find that that position is tougher on their knees or their hips or something like that. So the reason your legs are up high is because what makes it great for the racetrack is you can really, really lean over. And if you've seen MotoGP races where those bikes are leaned right over, that's what these are based on. This is what this comes from. You can lean this right over to touch the feeler, and those pegs are really, really high. You need some skill to do that, and if you're doing that on the roads, you're probably going way, way beyond the speed limits. So again, this bike is really easy to lean back and forth. For a 4-cylinder motorcycle, it's very lightweight, very compact. It's very fun to just easily maneuver. There's a lot of things about this position that make it very fun, but it's not going to be the most comfortable bike. So that's something you really have to take into account. Now let's start looking at the details of this, the real tech things that really make this bike stand out. So to start with this bike, let's take a look at the dash. I'm going to turn the key on. The key is actually off-centered here. We'll show you that a little bit later. And we've got the dash in a position where I don't think there's too much glare here. Now you may be expecting a TFT display. We know that the ZX-4R and ZX-4RR that were released do have a new TFT display. Obviously this one doesn't have that yet. I don't mind that too much because the way this is laid out is very clear. Now obviously Kawasaki is moving to that TFT display, and that will be in these bikes as they begin to evolve and go through next generations and that kind of thing. But you're not really losing anything with this here at all. So there's a selection switch on the left side handlebar that I'm going to use to select various things. Actually, before we go there, let me just point out before I move away from my shot here where I can see things. Check out the tach. The first 4,000 RPM on this bike, they don't matter. So you'll notice that a lot of bikes put power down lower in the rev range or in the mid-range. I just bought the Z900 RS, and a lot of that power is in that mid-range. On a super sport bike, all of the power is up high, and literally the first 4,000 RPM, they don't matter. You're living in 6 to 14, 15,000 RPM on this bike. That's where you're making your power. That's where you're driving this if you're on a track or that kind of thing. So it's just something to keep in mind. Again, a little different, a little fun. So there's a selection switch I'm going to show you a little bit on the left side handlebar, but I just want you to look up top there on, let's see, yeah, you can see that pretty clearly. So we've got the odometer there, and then you have the trip A, trip B, and back to odometer. So that's one selection switch on your handlebar. We'll show you the rest. On the bottom handlebar, or bottom switch of that switch, we'll show you that switch in a second, you're now looking at this bottom section here. Right now it's measuring outside temperature, which is what they would normally say is outside temperature, but on this race bike, it's the intake air. So it tells you where it's grabbing that temperature sensing. It's on the intake, so you have a sense of the air temperature coming in, which of course helps you understand the power that this bike can make. On a really hot day, it's going to make a little bit less power than on a cool air coming in there. So intake air, 21 degrees, that's our ambient temperature. Kilometers per liter is your fuel efficiency. If you care about that on this bike, you can get that. I think you can also set it to liters per 100 kilometers, and that's your average. So there's an instant and average down there, and then there's your range till empty, which of course is a calculation based on how you have been driving of how much range you have left. And then you have the temperature of your the coolant temperature, and then you have back to that intake air temperature. So that is the selections there. Now there's an F in here and a 1. I don't know if you can read on your screen, depends on what you're watching on, but that says power, and there's an F or an L, I'll show you the L in a second, and KTRC. So let's talk about the power modes first. Power mode is right here. I'm going to make it blink like that, and I'm going to select the power mode to L. So power mode is low, or power mode is full. So two power modes there. You can set it to a reduced power mode, so you can, for whatever reason, whether it's raining or something else, you can set it to reduced mode, or if you just want to kind of, get used to riding it without having it in full power. So that is that. We'll select there. And once you selected the full or low power mode, you go to your KTRC, which is Kawasaki Traction Control. I've done videos on how these systems work, but basically this is going to be set to off, which you better know how to ride, or level 1, or level 2, or on this one it has a third level there as well. So some bikes have 2 levels, something like, the Z900 RS that I drive has 2 levels. This one has more levels than that. And again, in rain, level 3 would probably be what you use. It's the highest intervention. Level 2, level 1. I don't think I would go beyond level 1 if it was me on this bike, but obviously you can turn the traction control off, which is great for the racetrack if you really kind of know how to ride this bike better than I would be able to ride. So we're going to leave that on level 1 as well and select that. So that is your dash. Of course, you've got your gear indicator over here, your clock, all the basics, clear speedometer, and of course, centrally located is that large tachometer, which again, really from 6,000 to 15,000 is where you're living on this bike and getting the information you need. So we're going to take a look at the left side handlebar right here. This is, of course, where your clutch lever is. Now, this is a slipper and assist clutch. Now, you may have heard me talk about that in bikes, even down to the 400cc Ninja or Z400. That is a feature that started out on race bikes, and it does two things for you. For the road rider, the biggest thing you're going to notice is a little bit lighter clutch pull. Now, this is nowhere near as light as something like the Ninja 400, Z400. You still have a firm clutch pull here, but what that slipper and assist clutch does is, as you pull in the clutch, it's a lighter weight, which is the assist function. The slipper side of things works into the drivetrain, and if you mess up a downshift or if you're really aggressive on the racetrack and you pop that clutch out, and you know the engine really has to rev, there's a lot of engine braking, sometimes that engine braking can cause that rear wheel to skid. So the assist part, or the slipper part, excuse me, allows that rear wheel to not slide, or at least be less likely to slide. So it's both lighter at the lever here and prevents you from having a sliding rear wheel when you dump that clutch in a certain race situation, or just because you screwed up the downshift on the, without rev matching on this bike. Now, that slipper and assist clutch is assisted by a quick shifter. So we're going to talk about the quick shifter when we go around and take a look at that, but that's something to keep in mind that we'll get to a little bit later in this video. Overall controls, you've got a little trigger shifter trigger button right here. That is going to flash your high beam. That's typical Kawasaki stuff, and all of this is typical Kawasaki stuff. High beams, low beams, again, flashing the high beams with your trigger, signal lights, horn, four-way flashers or hazard lights, and this is the selection switch. So when I selected the things on the top of the display, this is the button I was using to cycle through them. At the bottom of the display, this is the button I was using to cycle through them. So that would be, those temperature type things. This would be your trip A, trip B, and odometer. So very intuitive. And the select switch changes your full power mode, your low power mode, and your traction control. Very intuitive, very easy to use. And because of the way the dash is laid out, just at a glance, you kind of know exactly what you're doing. Some of the bikes with the TFT displays takes a little second longer to kind of guess at how it goes. You have to hold things down for rider modes and that kind of thing. And I like the simplicity of this. You want to just be driving, paying attention to where you're going. Obviously, you're going to be driving this bike quick at times, and that allows you to sort of make changes on the fly and know what you're doing. The other thing I should mention is there is a little knob up here. These levers are adjustable for reach, both the clutch lever and the brake lever. So small hands, large hands, doesn't matter. You're going to fit fine on this bike. This is a little bit of a busy visual shot given everything that is behind it with the graphics and all that, but I want to show you, again, little things that make a little difference. So there's that adjustment on that brake lever. Now, part of this Super Sport is the way the brake lever actuates. So because this actuates, it actually puts pressure down right there on your brake switch right there. That allows for great feel and really precise control. Traditional bikes without this sort of sport performance type feel will pull a cable or pull something straight out here, so it kind of has a different feel to it. So when you see performance bikes that push down on this right here, that's going to give you that great lever feel, and we'll show you other pieces of the brakes that kind of make it stand out from regular bikes as well. Down here on the handlebar, just a start button and a kill switch, and that's it. So we'll kind of leave that there. I do want to go back to the top here though and talk about the suspension. So taking a look at the top of your fork tubes here, sort of inside of the clip-ons, we'll talk about that. You've got your preload adjustment here, higher and lower. It tells you which way to spin that. And then you have the two adjustments here for tension and compression, TEN and compression. That's how they label them there, which allows full adjustment of the front suspension. This is an upgraded top-of-the-line Showa fork. Again, it's tough to show you in the video here exactly what they say. So I'll pop a video up here, or a picture up of the left side trying to show you sort of what the lettering says here on the left side, and we'll show another picture now on the right side showing you what the lettering looks like there. Again, this allows that full suspension adjustment, which is the kind of thing you're going to want if you're on the racetrack, to tweak things here, tweak things there, and it's very easy to get to, very simple to do, right at the top of the fork. While we're here, I just want to talk about the clip-ons, which are, a lot of people would call them the handlebars. Obviously, there's no continuous bar right across, so we don't call it a handlebar on this, it's a clip-ons. Most Ninjas that you are familiar with, the ones that I have done, the road-going Ninjas, will have clip-ons that clip up and out here. So your handlebar comes towards you and out. This one is underneath and comes down, and of course it's angled back. That gives you that aerodynamic tuck position, but it is also what contributes to making this just a little bit less comfortable than some of those more road-going bikes over this. So that's kind of how that works. Now let's take a look at the front brakes and talk about some differences in there. So I love this view right here because it shows so much of the focus of this bike. First of all, overall design of a couple things. The suspension is an upside down fork. This allows for more stiffness up top for racing, a little bit less unsprung weight, which really matters in a higher performance bike as well. So that's kind of typical stuff for the class, but again, different than some road going bikes. Same thing with the way the brakes are mounted here. We talked about that handle, the brake lever, excuse me, the way it's designed. These are also designed different too. Your attachment bolts here come in from this way rather than sort of on that way. It gives you a little bit more precision. For the road going bike, it's not going to be a whole lot of difference, but it gives you overall stiffness, which of course is what you want. So again, this is different. This is different. Then you look at the brakes overall. These are the pedal style brakes. Now they're moving away from some of these pedal style brakes on some of their bikes, but of course the theory is that these allow you to have a little bit extra cooling. I think it's mostly these pedal styles are just about style. But then of course the drilled rotors of course allow for a lot of cooling, and it's not a continuous disc, which is pretty standard stuff on most, but we used to do, if you look at the old original, like 1970s bikes, a single disc with no ventilation at all, and we added ventilation. And now this separation in here allows for this disc to expand and contract because this is absorbing heat. And that's what these sort of spacers do in here. So you're going to see this on high performance braking systems, that you have that sort of separate disc from inside here. Again, all about performance. And then the tires, you've got Battle Axe, S22, these are Hyper Sport tires. These are, you can already feel just putting your hands on them. These are different type of material. They're not going to last as long as some of the more road going tires, but they give you incredible grip, especially as they get a little bit warmed up. Incredible grip on both a racetrack and on the road. So everything you're looking at here is super sport, including this KIBS, Kawasaki Intelligent Braking System. So this is a more advanced ABS system. I've done videos on that in the past as well. But like I said, everything you see here is all about super sport performance, and it's super interesting to look at if you're a nerd like me. So I'm going to continue to geek out about the nerd stuff about this bike, stuff that makes me kind of just impressed with the overall technology here. So we talked about the shifter earlier. We talked about that slipper and assist clutch. Of course, the one thing you need to remember is you don't need to use the clutch for anything other than essentially getting into first gear on this bike. You can use it anytime you want, but this has a quick shifter. So what a quick shifter does is literally once you are driving, you can tap down or you can tap up on the gear shifter, and you do not have to use the clutch. You do not have to lift off the throttle to do an upshift. So that allows for lightning quick acceleration. And the way it works is this sort of system sends a message to the engine to just cut fuel for just a split second to allow the shift to happen, and then re-engages automatically. It is super slick to use, and it makes for lightning quick upshifts. And when you hear this thing zipping along, switching through the gears, there is no clutch pull in, then shift, then clutch release. You just hear the instant rev, dropping and going and dropping and going again. So again, up, down, quick shifter is a super cool thing, and it's just something that I think it just makes this bike super, super fun. And of course, it's a practical thing for the racetrack. It makes you faster. The other thing you're going to see here is simply the steel foot pegs here. Traditionally, road-going bikes are going to have some level of rubber padding here to take out vibrations, but again, they add some weight. They're unnecessary on a race bike, and that's why you have these sort of, sharp, grippy things. They will grip your riding boots, but they are no concessions to passengers here to comfort. This is all about being race ready. Kind of another weird angle to film at here. I would be showing you sort of the air entrance here, the ram air dead in the center. So of course, when you look at aerodynamics of a motorcycle, the highest pressure is at the very front leading edge. Down the sides, it's kind of moving to the side, but right in the dead center, the air's got to go somewhere, and that's where the pressure is. So having the air intake there, that sort of ram air style intake right there in the center, makes a difference for adding that power at speed. Now what's interesting is it actually comes through into the frame, through the center here, into that frame area. This is an aluminum frame that's unique to this bike, and it just allows all these things of performance. So again, ram air into here, into a really unique frame for a race bike like this. All of it is built together to work seamlessly as one to both build power, and again, this frame is compact and lightweight, allowing for great handling. So really cool the way it makes power, really cool the way it's sort of designed together to stay compact, stay nice and central to the center of this for center of gravity for better handling. Really smart design. This is another view that I really kind of like, just to show all sorts of different things all in one. So you do have your passenger foot pegs here. Again, this is a bike that can be used on the street. You can take a passenger here, a little bit of a tie down ring in there. So if you were tying things down to the tail without going through here, most modern sport bikes, you can have some sort of bag tied to this tail piece up here that can be removed, but you do have a little hook there if you wanted to. So we'll put that up. Overall, the swing arm here, again, it's all about lightweight and strength, so it's cool design. And again, you can have a really good access to see beyond here for those super sport tires or hypersport, Bridgestone hypersport type tires. Even the little the fender in here, it's got some venting there because the wheel is going to create some turbulence in there, and it allows that to come out, allows the dirt to stay put, but the air to come out. So it's just smart design. And again, looking a little forward here, you do have that tucked in suspension component, rear suspension, as far forward as it can be, nice and low in the chassis. So all of the weight is down low, everything's tucked forward. And again, this thing is all about the handling at that point there. The other thing you're going to notice is if you look at the chain here, you can just tell by looking at this bike compared to some others, it is a little bit stronger chain than some, and that's of course because it's moving a lot of power through here. Taking a look at the overall bike here again, normally I try to film with me in the shot, but again, I want to get a nice close look at the entire piece together because that's really what this bike is. Every piece works well together to make it a great bike. So your signal lights are built into the bodywork here. They're not on the stocks. That's both aerodynamics, it's looks, it's a whole bunch of things, and that styling of the fairing here. So of course, this is aerodynamically designed. We mentioned that sort of ram air intake, bringing air into there. You've also got some areas for the heat to come out of there, and it does curl in a little bit, so when your legs are tucked in here, they are also out of the wind, and this is all pushing air a little bit away, so you'll still feel the wind on your legs, but from an aerodynamic perspective, it allows you to tuck in close and keep your legs out of the wind. You can see that 4-cylinder engine in there. You know, pieces of it come through the bodywork here. Again, all about lightweight. You can really see that frame coming up through here, coming up in the backside as well. Single exhaust on this on the right side. Again, the reason to do single exhaust on a Super Sport, one exhaust is lighter than two. So you're going to have one on one side and that's it. It's all about lightweight. This bike with the ABS brakes weighs about 430 pounds. And again, thin and compact through the middle here. It's something that I really can't emphasize enough. You have to widen around here to have the 4 cylinders that come out there, that come in under sort of here, 4 cylinders laid across the width of the bike, but nice and thin through the riding position and stays thin through the tail. So the overall look here, nice and compact, and that's what you want. So before I wrap up with my final thoughts, I just want to point out, of course, this bike does have LED headlights. Some of the Kawasaki's in the past had sort of one side on and not the other with a low beam. Both sides are on. They're the bright white LED lights, and both sides are the high beam. So you've got good white lights there, a good instant on, instant off LED brake light there as well. So earlier in this video, I talked about how this is a bike that the kind of bike that I just lusted over as a child, but now will probably never buy. And I want to be clear, I absolutely love that this bike exists, and what's cool about it is on the bike that I just bought, the Z900 RS, it has components that are all built for the race bike. The cool thing about Kawasaki is all of this race technology, it works its way down into other types of bikes. So you can still have so many pieces of these bikes in other bikes in the Kawasaki lineup. This is a flagship bike, and there are going to be people that want this exact bike. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, there are features of this bike that we want. The great feeling pull from the brake levers and the different race style brake design, the upside down forks, all of those are on the bike I just bought, but I have an upright seating position. Having this bike with so much power is great, high in the revs, but for most on-road riding, having power a little bit lower in the revs makes it a little easier to drive around town, more comfortable for your country road sporting adventures instead of your well beyond legal speed racetrack adventures. So there's all kinds of things there. Things like traction control have been perfected on a bike like this to be used by us on bikes on the street. The advanced ABS system, my current bike doesn't have that, but there are other bikes that are road-going bikes that have that KIBS advanced braking system. There are so many things in this bike, and it's just cool to see them all together in one, but all sorts of pieces of this are just sprinkled throughout the Kawasaki lineup, and they are perfected because of this. So, who is this bike for? This is not a bike for a beginner. If you want to bike as a beginner, you should not ride this simply because the world of motorcycling opens up with different styles of bikes that maybe are more street friendly, maybe are more comfortable. You can do different types of tours. You don't want to be touring on this bike. And again, I know people are going to let me know in the comments, oh, I did tour on that bike, and good for you, but this isn't the best touring bike, and it's, you know, it's designed to be the best at other things, and it's great at that. So This is a bike that if you get used to other bikes and want some more speed, if you get used to sport riding and want some more lean angle, want to come out of corners faster, want to go into corners later, brake later, come into them faster, this is a bike that is worth moving up to. It is an iconic bike. That 636, it was a cheater bike. It was the first 600 bike to kind of go beyond that 599cc, give you a little bit extra cc's to make it an absolute blast. Again, this is a fully road legal race bike. It's got a firm ride. You can touch the suspension up, but it will grip through corners. It will drive quickly anywhere you want to do. And it's, like I said, all of the package is together in one, and it makes it iconic. But if this isn't the bike for you and there are things you like about it, like I said, pieces of the technology, pieces of the design, frame design, all kinds of other things are things you can find in other bikes in the lineup that maybe are more suited to you. This is the pinnacle. Everything's together on one, but there may be a better bike for you out there. So let me know in this video or in the comments of this video what you want to know about this bike. It's so much fun to look at. Obviously, it'd be a blast to ride. There's all kinds of riding reviews out there which you can see this thing on the racetrack. I'm not going to do that. My skills are not anywhere near where this bike is capable of riding. So I'm going to continue to show you the details and talk about the details and make sense of it. If you want to know more things, let me know in the comments below, and I'll come back to this in future comments and in future videos, unless this sells. If you want to buy it, it's sitting right here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports here in Fredericton, New Brunswick. It is February right now. Bikes are selling. Again, I don't know if we're getting another one of these. Right now, this is the only one we have. So if this is one you want, come by and buy it. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll talk to you in the next one.